Okay, here's the English translation. Staying faithful to the original text, the gleam of the pearls around her neck blinded me for an instant, not because of the reflection of the crystal chandelier in the dining room, but because of the brutality of the revelation that simple gesture carried. Mariana turned her face with that smile. I knew so well, the smile of someone who knows exactly what they're doing, and said in a honeyed voice dripping with poison, "Mother-in-law, just look at this beautiful gift Gabriel gave me. It's identical to yours, isn't it? He has impeccable taste in jewelry." Her fingers caressed the pearls with calculated delicacy, while her eyes pierced me like sharp blades. I felt my heart plummet. That necklace, my necklace, the gift that I myself had chosen, paid for, and wrapped with so much care, placing it in my son's hands so that he could give it to me, as if it were from him, now hung around her neck like a war trophy. And worse, she knew. From the malicious gleam in her eyes, from the way she prolonged each word, I knew she knew everything. The room spun around me. The voices of the other guests, my sister, my brother-in-law, some close friends, became a distant hum. I gripped the edge of the mahogany table to keep from staggering. Gabriel, my son, my only son, was beside her, oblivious, or pretending to be oblivious to the storm his wife had just unleashed within me. He smiled uncomfortably, as he always did when he sensed tension in the air, but said nothing. He never said anything, and it was in his silence, in that deafening void of defense, that I felt for the first time the bitter taste of loneliness within my own family. Mariana continued, "You know I chose it myself. I went to that charming jewelry store downtown, Esplendor, and when I saw this necklace in the window, I thought, it's perfect." Gabriel didn't hesitate for a second to buy it. She laughed, and that sound echoed like glass breaking inside my chest. I had been in that same jewelry store 3 weeks before. I had spent hours talking to the saleswoman, explaining that I wanted something special, classic, elegant, something that represented the relationship my son and I always had. I paid with my own savings, it wasn't cheap, and asked them to wrap it with the utmost care. When I handed the navy blue box to Gabriel, with that white satin ribbon, my eyes sparkled. "Son, this is for you to give me on my birthday. It will mean so much to me." He had accepted it with a quick hug and a kiss on the forehead. "Of course, Mom. You deserve it." And I had believed him. But now, seeing those same pearls swaying slightly on Mariana's neck as she leaned over to pick up a glass of wine, I understood that something much greater than a simple gift had been violated. My trust, my dignity, the invisible bond that I considered unbreakable between mother and son. And the worst part, the growing certainty that this wasn't an accident. Mariana wasn't the type to do things by chance. Each word, each gesture of hers was measured, planned. And while the guests chatted animatedly about trivialities, the weather, summer vacations, my sister's house renovation, I stood there, frozen, with a cracked porcelain smile on my face, holding the ruins of what I thought was my life. It was then that I realized I needed to understand how I had gotten to this point, how I had allowed my own generosity to be turned into a weapon against me. 10 years earlier, when Gabriel first introduced me to Mariana, I thought I had found the daughter-in-law of my dreams. She was pretty, with that straight brown hair that fell perfectly over her shoulders, almond-shaped eyes, and a smile that lit up any room. But more than that, she seemed attentive. She asked about my health, complimented my food, said that Gabriel was lucky to have such a present mother. I melted. After so many years raising my son alone, his father abandoned us when Gabriel was only 5 years old. I was hungry for that feeling of expanded family. The idea of having a daughter, even if by affinity, warmed my heart. I had dedicated every minute of my life to my son. I worked 3 different jobs for years to ensure that he studied in good schools, had decent clothes, and could do his activities. I gave up relationships, trips, personal dreams, all for Gabriel. And when he graduated in engineering, with honors, I felt that every sacrifice had been worth it. He was my pride, my accomplishment, the living proof that a mother's love could move mountains. When he announced the engagement, I cried with happiness. I helped plan the wedding. I paid part of the party, even if that meant emptying my already meager savings even more. On the wedding day, when I saw him waiting for Mariana at the altar, wearing that navy blue suit that I had helped choose, I felt a pang of absolutely. Here's the culturally adapted version for an English-speaking audience. Sadness along with joy. It was the end of an era. He wouldn't be just mine anymore. But I convinced myself that it was growth, that it was natural, and Mary would be an addition to the family, not a subtraction. How wrong I was. In the first few months, everything seemed perfect. They lived in a small but cozy apartment. I visited often, brought food, helped with cleaning. Mary smiled, thanked me, but there was something in her eyes that I couldn't decipher. A coldness disguised as politeness. Gabe started to become more distant. He called less. When I asked if I could visit, he said they were busy, always busy. I began to feel like I was being gently pushed out of my son's life. It was Kathy, my best friend of 30 years, who first warned me. We were having coffee in her kitchen when I mentioned I was worried about Gabe. "Helen, you need to understand something," she said with her typical bluntness. "Some daughters-in-law don't want to share. They want to stake their claim. And you, being such a devoted mother, are seen as a threat." I had laughed at the time. "Mary's not like that, Kathy. She's sweet." Kathy had just sighed, shaking her head. "I hope you're right." But the weeks turned into months, and the distance only increased. Gabe stopped coming to visit me on Sundays, our sacred tradition of having lunch together. When I called, he answered hurriedly, always with some excuse. Mary was never available when I invited her for coffee, a walk, a chat. It was always "I have plans," or "I'm tired." I began to feel a tightness in my chest that I couldn't name. Was it rejection, abandonment, or just paranoia from an overprotective mother, as Gabe implied once during an argument? Then came my 62nd birthday. I didn't want anything big, just an intimate dinner with the people I loved. Kathy convinced me to do something at home. Invite Gabe and Mary, my sister Beth and her husband, some close friends. "You deserve to celebrate, Helen. You've spent your whole life taking care of others. Let others take care of you for one night." I agreed. I prepared everything with care. My famous mushroom risotto, that lemon dessert that Gabe had loved since he was a child, decorated the house with fresh flowers. And that's when I had the idea of the necklace. I wanted something special coming from my son. Something that said, "Mom, I see you. I value you. You're not invisible." I went to the Prestige Jewelers because I knew it was a fancy place where I would find something timeless. The saleswoman, a kind lady named Miss Irene, showed me several options. When I saw the pearl necklace, classic, with 3 perfectly aligned strands and a discreet white gold clasp, I knew it was the one. "It's for a very special gift," I explained to Miss Irene. "For myself, actually. But I want it to come from my son." She smiled with understanding. "Many mothers do that. It's a way to create beautiful memories." I paid in cash, even though it hurt my wallet. I took the little box home, like carrying a treasure. When I handed it to Gabe, 2 weeks before my birthday, he seemed genuinely touched. "Mom, it's beautiful. You have good taste." He held the box carefully and promised to keep it safe until the right day. I floated during those 2 weeks, imagining the moment when he would hand it to me, maybe with some kind words, maybe a long hug. I imagined wearing the necklace with pride, telling my friends, "My son gave it to me," because deep down, it was more than a necklace. It was the validation that everything I had done, all the sacrifices, had meant something. But on the day of my birthday, Gabe arrived with Mary, a simple bouquet of flowers, and a generic card. "Happy birthday, Mom," he said, kissing my cheek. I waited. I waited during the entire dinner. I waited while they lit the candles on the cake. I waited while everyone sang happy birthday. The necklace didn't come. Gabe didn't mention it. And when finally, late at night, everyone had left, and I was alone washing the dishes, I felt the tears silently running down my face. He had forgotten, or worse, hadn't found it important enough to remember. Then 3 weeks later, came the dinner where everything fell apart. It was supposed to be just a casual get-together, an excuse that Mary had given to bring the family closer. She insisted so much that I, naively hopeful, believed that maybe things were changing. Kathy was there, Beth too, some friends. Their house was spotless, the table elegantly set. And then Mary walked into the room wearing my necklace. Our necklace, the necklace that should have been kept safe, waiting to be mine. She wore it as if it were hers by right, as if Gabe had actually gone to the jewelry store, chosen it personally, paid for it with his own money. But I dissed key changes made *names, *Helena. Mom remains the same, fairly common asterisk Gabriel, Gabe more common and friendly, asterisk Maria, Simmery similar, sound, more common asterisk, Celia, Kathy common nickname for similar names, asterisk Beatrice, Beth common nickname for Elizabeth, asterisk Irene, Miss Irene, more respectful, typical of customer service, asterisk location, asterisk replaced Joel Harriet Esplendor, with Prestige Jewelers, asterisk idiom slay Ben, expressions, adjusted wording for better flow and cultural relevance. This version should resonate more naturally with an English-speaking audience, while maintaining the core story and emotional impact. Kem, non dice nada, Gabriel Ebeshu, Ekabesa, Envergani, J. Uha Kafas, Uma boa idea, Noedska, Ha Kafas, Uma boa idea, Noha Kafas, Uma boa idea, Uma boa idea, Uma boa idea minin tade, Dial Kafas de comer minhas proprias, Dial Kafas, Uma boa idea, Dial Kafas, Uma boa idea the truth. And by the glint in her eyes, I realized she knew too. Maybe Gabriel had told her. Maybe she had found out on her own. Either way, that wasn't an accident. It was a declaration of war. If you've also been through situations where your generosity was tested, or where you've had to face complex family relationships, subscribe to the channel to continue receiving real stories like this, accounts of overcoming, strength, and dignity that can touch your heart and inspire your journey. After that night, I entered a dark period. I would cry alone at home, going over every interaction, every word, trying to understand where I had gone wrong. Maybe I had been too intrusive. Maybe my suffocating love had pushed Gabriel away. Maybe Mariana was right to see me as a threat. I stopped calling my son. I stopped inviting them to anything. I closed myself off in a shell of pain and self-pity. Kelia tried to pull me out of that hole. Helena, you can't let that woman destroy you like this. You're stronger than that. But I didn't feel strong. I felt invisible, disposable, like a tool that had fulfilled its function and could now be thrown away. Beatrice, my sister, was furious when I told her what had happened. That viper did it on purpose, and Gabriel let her. Does he know it was you who bought it? I didn't know how to answer. I was afraid to confront him, afraid to hear a truth I wasn't ready to accept. It was Dona Irene, the jewelry store salesperson, who gave me the first clue as to what had really happened. 3 months after the fateful dinner, I returned to Esplendor. I'm not sure why. Maybe masochism, maybe hope for some magical explanation. Dona Irene recognized me immediately. Ah, the lady with the pearl necklace. What a wonderful coincidence. My heart raced. Coincidence. She nodded, excited. Yes, a few weeks after you bought it, a young woman came in looking for the exact same model. She had a photo on her cell phone. She said an acquaintance was wearing the same one, and she had fallen in love with it. She wanted to know all the details, the exact model, the clasp, everything. She bought an identical one. My mouth went dry. Do you remember what she looked like? Dona Irene frowned, thoughtful, pretty straight brown hair, light eyes, very polite. She said it was a special gift for herself. Mariana. She had come to the jewelry store, looked for the exact model, bought it with her own money. But why? And more importantly, how did she know about the necklace? The answer came unexpectedly. Gabriel finally called me, weeks later, saying we needed to talk. I went to their house with my heart in my throat, not knowing what to expect. Mariana wasn't there. She went out with friends, Gabriel explained. We sat in the living room, that heavy silence between us. Mom, I need to tell you something. He looked tired, with deep dark circles under his eyes. About the necklace. I held my breath. Gabriel ran his hands over his face. When you gave me that little box, I was very happy. I was going to keep it carefully to give to you on your birthday. But a few days later, Mariana found the box. I had left it in the dresser drawer. She opened it, saw the necklace, and when I got home, she was furious. My stomach churned. Furious. Why? Gabriel sighed. She said it was humiliating. That you were buying a gift for yourself and using me as an intermediary. That it was a form of control, of making me look like an ungrateful son who couldn't even choose a decent gift for his own mother. His words cut me like razors. And you believed that? Gabriel avoided my gaze. I don't know, Mom. Mariana has a way of explaining things that makes everything seem logical. She said you've always done that, always portrayed yourself as a victim, always manipulated situations so that I would feel indebted to you. I felt tears burning my eyes, but I held them back. And you think I did that? That my whole life of sacrifices was manipulation? He finally looked at me, and I saw confusion in his eyes. I don't know what to think anymore, Mom. Mariana says you never let me grow up, that you always treated me like a child, that you don't respect our marriage. Each word was a stab wound. But then Gabriel continued. That's why, when she found out about the necklace, she had an idea. She said she was going to buy the same one, that she was going to wear it to the party she was planning, and that this would make you understand that I don't need you to do things for me, that I have my own family now. The room spun. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't coincidence. It was premeditated, calculated, cruel, and worse. Gabriel had known, had agreed, had stood there, that night, watching me implode inside, while pretending not to know anything. You let her. My voice came out shaky. You knew this would destroy me, and yet you let it happen. You didn't say anything. Gabriel lowered his head, ashamed. I thought it was a good idea at the time. I thought it would prove to you that I'm a man now, that I can make my own decisions. The tears finally fell, silently, painfully. And do you think you proved it, or is going to happen? Gabriel stood up, agitated. Mom, it wasn't to destroy you. It was to make you understand. You need to accept that I'm not that boy who depended on you for everything anymore. I stood up too, and for the first time in decades, I felt anger. Not sadness, not hurt, pure, crystal clear anger. You think I don't know you've grown up. You think every sacrifice I made was because I saw you as a child. I gave you independence, Gabriel. I gave you education, values, opportunities. I never trapped you. I never manipulated you. I only loved you the only way I knew how, with total surrender. Gabriel fell silent, looking at the floor, and in that silence, I understood that I had lost my son, not to maturity, not to marriage, but to someone who had planted poison little by little, drop by drop, until he could no longer distinguish true love from manipulation. I took a deep breath. You know what's saddest about all this, Gabriel? It's not the necklace. It's not the money I spent, or the humiliation I went through. It's knowing that you chose to believe the ugliest version of my story, that you preferred to believe that I am a manipulative, controlling woman, rather than accept that I simply loved you with everything I had. I grabbed my purse, but I understood the message. You don't need me anymore, and I don't need this pain anymore. I walked to the door. Gabriel called out to me. Mom, wait. But I didn't wait. I left that house, with my spine straight, my shoulders firm, even if inside I was shattered. The following months were of silent reconstruction. I returned to therapy, something I had abandoned years before due to lack of time and money. Dr. Amelia helped me see things that I had normalized, the way I faded into the background to make others shine, how I measured my worth by external approval, especially from Gabriel. Helena, you dedicated your entire life to being a mother, and that's beautiful, but you forgot to be Helena. Who are you, besides Gabriel's mother? The question shocked me. I didn't know how to answer. I started doing things for myself. I went back to painting, a hobby I had abandoned decades ago. I signed up for dance classes, something I always wanted to do but never had the courage. I reconnected with old friends, made new friends, and for the first time in a long time, I started to feel whole, not as half of something, not as someone who exists only in function of others, but as a complete human being, with desires, dreams, and self-worth. Celia was radiant to see my transformation. I knew you had this in you, Helena. You just needed to remember. Beatrice, always more direct, asked, "What about Gabriel? Did he call?" I shook my head. No, and it's okay. But deep down, it wasn't completely okay. It still hurt. But it was a different pain, no longer the acute pain of abandonment, but the dull pain of acceptance. Accepting that people we love can hurt us. Accepting that we cannot always save relationships that the other party has already given up on. Accepting that my worth did not depend on my son's recognition. 6 months after our last meeting, Gabriel appeared at my door. He was thinner, with tired eyes. "Mom, can I come in?" I let him. I made coffee, as I always did. We sat at the kitchen table, that familiar silence between us. "Mariana and I are having problems," he began. I said nothing, just listened. She's not who I thought she was. Or maybe I'm just seeing it now. He told me about the constant comments, the veiled criticisms, the way she diminished him in public. And when I defend myself, she says I'm too sensitive, that I don't understand sarcasm, that I need to grow up. I felt a pang of compassion, but I maintained my emotional distance. And you came here because, Gabriel raised his eyes, and I saw tears. Because I was wrong. I was very wrong with you. I let her convince me that you were the problem, when in reality, she was jealous. Jealous of our bond, of our history. And instead of protecting that, I let her destroy it. He extended his hand over the table, but I didn't hold it. Mom, can you forgive me? I took a deep breath. Gabriel, I never stopped loving you. But forgiveness doesn't mean that everything goes back to the way it was. You broke my trust. You made me question my worth as a mother, as a person. That can't be fixed with a conversation. He nodded, tears flowing freely now. I know, but I want to try. I want to rebuild this, if you let me. I looked at my son, that man I had raised, that I had loved with every fiber of my being, and I saw for the first time, not an extension of myself, but a flawed individual, capable of making serious mistakes, capable of hurting me deeply, and realizing that was liberating. I don't know if I can trust you again, Gabriel, but I'm willing to try, as long as some things are clear. First, I am not, and never have been, a Manny, and finally, I was doing it in the most powerful way possible by example. 1 year after that fateful dinner, I was in my makeshift studio, a corner in my living room, that I turned into a creative space, painting a sunset over the sea. Celia was by my side, also painting. You seem so different now, she commented, lighter, like a weight has been lifted off your shoulders. I smiled. I think I finally understood that I don't need to carry the weight of other people's expectations, only my own. The phone rang. It was Gabriel. Mom, can you come over for dinner tonight? Just you and me. No Mariana, no dramas. I just want to spend time with you. My heart warmed, but not in the desperate way it used to. It was something softer, healthier. Yes, son, I'd love to. When I arrived at his house that night, I noticed subtle changes. Photos of me with Gabriel, which had been hidden before, now decorated the living room. The table was set with simplicity, but care. And on my plate, there was a small navy blue box, with a white satin ribbon. I looked at Gabriel, confused. He smiled, a little embarrassed. Open it. With trembling hands, I opened the box. Inside was a different necklace, not of pearls, but of aquamarine stones, interspersed with silver. Delicate, unique, chosen by him. I know I can't erase what happened with the other necklace, he said softly, but I want to start over. The right way. I chose this one. I paid for it. And I'm giving it to you, because you are the strongest and most resilient woman I know. You've taught me more about dignity in this past year than in all the other years of my life. Tears streamed down my face, but they were different tears, not of pain, but of healing. I let Gabriel put the necklace on me. The touch of his hands on my neck, closing the clasp carefully, was symbolic of something being closed and something being opened. A cycle of pain ending, a cycle of rebuilding beginning. We had dinner, talked, laughed, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had my son back. Not the way he was before, but in a new, more mature, more real way. When I returned home, that night, I looked in the mirror, wearing my new necklace. The stones glowed softly in the light, and I finally saw what I should have seen all along. Not an invisible woman, not a disposable mother, but a complete woman. A woman who had faced the most painful rejection and survived. A woman who, here's the direct translation, that she had chosen her own dignity above the need for approval. A woman who had learned that true love doesn't diminish you, it expands you. And as I took off the necklace and carefully stored it in my dresser, next to paintbrushes and dance class tickets, I understood the most important lesson. We are not defined by the gifts we give or receive, by the people who choose us or reject us. We are defined by how we get up after we fall, how we defend our worth, even when the world tries to convince us that we don't have any. The necklace that Mariana wore that night wasn't mine. It never was, because the true gift, the true jewel, was always inside me, and no one, absolutely no one, could take that away from me. That is the truth, that all of us. Now, here's the culturally adapted version for an English-speaking audience, that she had chosen her own dignity over seeking validation. A woman who had learned that true love doesn't shrink you, it empowers you. And as I took off the necklace and carefully stored it in my dresser, next to paintbrushes and ballet class tickets, I understood the most important lesson. We are not defined by the gifts we give or receive, by the people who choose us or reject us. We are defined by how we pick ourselves up after we fall, how we stand up for our worth, even when the world tries to tell us we're worthless. The necklace that Maria wore that night wasn't mine. It never was, because the real gift, the real gem, was always inside me, and no one, absolutely no one, could take that away from me. That is the truth, that all of us. Here's a breakdown of the changes and why they were made. Mariana to Mary. Mariana isn't an inherently problematic name, but Maria is a more common and easily recognizable name in English-speaking cultures, while still maintaining a similar feel. Bilhetes de aulas, de danza, to ballet class tickets. Dance class tickets is perfectly understandable, but ballet class tickets adds a slightly more specific and familiar detail that resonates better. Diminuit voci, to shrink you empowers you. While diminish you is correct, shrink you is a more common and impactful way to express the idea of being made smaller or less important. I also changed expands you to empowers you in the line above for clarity and flow. Defendemos, nosso valor, to stand up for our worth. This substitution uses a more common idiom in English. No temos, to we're worthless. Replace we don't have any with we're worthless is a more dramatic and impactful way to express the feeling of being devalued. Verdadeiro, joya, to real gem. Jewel is fine, but gem often feels slightly more intimate and valuable.